ولا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الهزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. اللهم أعذنا من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأصلح لنا شأننا كله لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. وبعد، فقال المؤلف لحجة الإسلام al-Ghazali رحمه الله ونفعنا به وبكم. وأما فضول الحلال فإنه آفة العباد وبلية أهل الاجتهاد، فإني تأملت فوجدت فيه 10 آفات من أصول هذا فيها هن أصول في هذا الشأن. So remember, we're talking about now, Imam al-Ghazali is talking about the stomach and its appetites, and the importance of avoiding, first of all, the haram from going into the stomach, and then avoiding excessive of the halal as a second stage. The first stage is for every Muslim, because taking in haram obviously is a sinful act, and also it leads to us being then cut off from our du'as being answered and things like that, as is mentioned in the hadith about the man who says Ya Rab, Ya Rab, and his clothing is haram, his food is haram, he's built literally ghudhiya, like he's been nourished by haram. How then can his dua be answered? You know? So that's very important, because the dua is then the key to getting tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only when we humble ourselves in front of Allah and beg for Him to guide us and give us tawfiq, then He might give us tawfiq. But for our dua, then we also need to be nourished on halal. So then the next issue he was saying was then to also avoid excessive of the halal, even what is halal, to avoid excessive in that. And he said there's 10 things in this matter that I have reflected upon. الأولى في كثرة الأكل قسوة القلب وذهاب نوره. First he says that with eating excessively there is the hardening of the heart. The hardening of the heart and the loss of the light of the heart. Yes, what he means by that is the spiritual illumination of the individual, of the heart, can be lost simply by excessive indulgence in appetites of the stomach. What he means by that is, if someone is eating in moderation, eating and drinking in moderation, their stomachs are lighter, they're able to engage in ibadat, in dhikr, in reflection, in reading Quran, all of these things, able to concentrate more on that, able to have more focus. When someone's stomach is excessively full, they become unable to exercise any of their limbs, including their brain as well, to some extent. And we know physiologically now as well, when the stomach becomes filled up, that the blood supply of the body becomes diverted to the stomach. The blood supply of the body gets diverted to the stomach when you've eaten or drunk a large meal, for the digestion process to take place. So a lot of the energy of the body, this is physiologically a factor that we know, a lot of the energy of the body gets into digesting the food. That's why after you eat, especially if you had a hearty meal, you are going to feel sort of tired, you know? You're not going to feel energetic to occupy yourself in other things for half an hour, 1 hour after you eat. Because now a lot of the energy of the body is going into the digestion process, which is quite an active process, you know, within the stomach and the intestines. So that's the first thing. روي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا تميت القلب بكثرة الطعام والشراب فإن القلب يموت كالزرع إذا كثر عليه الماء. So narrated in this particular hadith where it's narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, do not kill the heart with too much food or drink. And he said it's like the crop. If you give it too much water, it can die as well. You know, for people who do gardening, they'll know that overwatering the plants is also bad for them. Because it makes them, I don't remember the term they use, but they sort of drown, not drown, but
waterlogged.
It's
waterlogged.
Waterlogged, you know, they get just, the roots get damaged by having too much water as well. So the body needs food, it needs nourishment to work at its optimal level, but too much is then going to become also detrimental. And we'll come later on actually a really amazing hadith he mentions, which I wasn't aware of. We'll come to it later inshallah. ولقد شبه ذلك بعض الصالحين بأن المائدة كالقدر تحت القلب تغلي والبخار يرتفع إليه فكثرة البخار تكدره وتسخمه. Some of the scholars, one of the scholars made a metaphor of the stomach like a pot that is boiling up underneath the heart. Because you have the heart and then underneath that is the stomach, isn't it? Anatomically. So if the stomach is like boiling up with all this activity, the bukhar, the smoke that rises up, if it's too much, then it leads to sort of blackening or, heating up the heart. والثانية أن في كثرة الأكل فتنة الأعضاء وهيجها وانبعاثها للفضول والفساد. So once again what they mentioned previously, eating too much leads to then the limbs becoming overactive and having a lot of energy, and often then tending towards doing things which may be unrighteous as well, getting that extra energy to fulfill the other desires. فإن الرجل إذا كان شبعان باطنا اشتهت عينه النظر إلى ما لا يعنيه. When a person is full up, stomach is full, his eyes become desirous of looking at those things that they don't need to look at. من حرام أو فضول, either looking at haram or just looking at things that are unuseful, not useful, flicking through catalogues, looking at gadgets, technology that you don't really need, these type of things. May not be haram, but it's just not something that's going to be helpful to us. One of the things that a lot of Muslims are doing, talking about practicing Muslims now, that is totally unnecessary and wasting a lot of time, is just surfing on websites and chat rooms to do with Islam. To do with Islam, there may be discussion forums, chat rooms, different websites to do with Islam. So they, it's not like they're doing something haram, but they are wasting a lot of time. And I know one brother, he got rid of his internet from his house completely because he realized that he actually was addicted to it, and he was, he wasn't doing anything haram. He was actually going to like discussions, Sufis against Salafis, the fiqh, Hanafi fiqh against the non-madhabis, and trying to contribute to those discussions, and all of these things were going on. And he realized it was, it's nothing but his ego when he was getting involved, to try to bash the other person over the head with a hadith or something, So a lot of that is just comes under this category, Really, how is it benefiting us as well, a lot of people spend excessive amounts of time reading or watching about politics. Yeah, politics is one of the most interesting subjects, without doubt. That's why people can just spend days and days or discussing politics, watching politics, reading about politics. But you have to think, what's the benefit in it for you, for the community, for the society, for the Muslims? Are you fulfilling any fard kifaya, anything mustahab, anything that's going to be useful here? If you are, then good. But if, honestly speaking, you're not, then it will come under this category of an occupation that is simply not haram, but just a bit of a waste of time, really. When there are a lot of things that need to be done, which are fard kifayas, let alone fard ains, a lot of them that need to be done, which should be prioritized. And never try to learn politics from newspapers or news channels. If you do want to go into politics, do it properly and study it properly from proper books, textbooks, etc. Don't try to learn politics from journalists, because journalists, that's not their job. Just leave in the office here, please, Mara. Journalist's job is just to dig out news and present. They're not political scientists or scholars. Why?
Because I did a uniform.
You have a coat hanging up outside. There's a coat, a big long coat. It's in the side pocket. So that even more reason why, even going into politics is no benefit in reading newspapers or watching news on TV, because these are journalists who don't really know the subject properly. Yeah? That's not their profession. والأذن الاستماع إليه. The second, the eyes will want to just do things which are wasteful. The ears would want to just delve into things which are wasteful, or even worse, haram. Yeah. So once your belly's full, you want to relax, listen to things which are not very useful, gossip. So-and-so was doing this, or did you see so-and-so? Did you see them? What clothes was that person wearing? Just gossip. وَاللِّسَانَ تَكَلُّمْ بِهِ. Your tongue will then want to delve into these type of things as well. وَالْفَرْجُ وَالشَّهْوَةُ. Your private parts will become have more energy to do things which may be fulfilling those desires. وَالرِّجَلَ الْمَشِي إِلَيْهِ. Your feet and legs will have the strength to take you to some of these activities. وإن كان جائعا فتكون الأعضاء كلها ساكنة هادئة. When someone is hungry, all of these limbs will be settled, as we experience when we're fasting. People don't want to speak when they're fasting. This is why if you meet the Bedouins, Bedouins that live in harsh conditions, like they're used to living in harsh conditions, in deserts. That's the norm for them, hard living conditions. They don't talk much at all. They don't speak, they don't waste words. They don't speak. People who live in towns and cities and more luxury and things like that, they talk more. Bedouins don't talk. They do a lot of, that's why they have so many gestures as well, signals. Because they don't want to talk. In Arab countries, they have so many different signals. You know some? Do you know someone?
Signals.
You must do.
Language. Like.
This means wait.
Okay. I thought that's everybody sharing this.
No,
Really?
it's just the Arab thing. Yeah.
We're using our hands,
means
yeah.
wait, like, yeah.
We all the time talk with hands, yeah.
And if they say no, they say this.
Yeah.
I didn't realize when I first went to Syria, I thought people were being really rude. Because they kept going,
So this is normal.
but it means no. After a while I realized it means no. I thought they were just, So they have all these type of things. This is from Bedouins. They didn't like to, because just conserving your energy, لا تطمح إلى شيء. So then your limbs, they just relax and they don't have that energy. ولا تنشط لها. ولقد كان الأستاذ أبو جعفر رحمه الله ولقد قال الأستاذ أبو جعفر رحمه الله إن الباطن عضو إن جاع هو شبع سائر الأعضاء. So Abu Ja'far, one of the sheikhs, rahimahullah, said an very interesting thing. He said, the stomach is such a member of the body, if it is hungry, the rest of the limbs are, how can we say, not full, but, what's another word for full? Contented, let's say.
He's got satiated.
Satiated, yeah, that's good, yeah, satiated. So the rest of the limbs are satiated, and if the stomach is full, the rest of the limbs are hungry because then they want to do something, to get that energy. وإن جاء هو شبع سائر الأعضاء يعني تسكن فلا تطالبك بشيء فإن شبع هو جاء سائر الأعضاء وجملة الأمر أن أفعال الرجل وأقواله على حسب طعامه وشرابه. So this is just to summarize, all of the action and the speech of a person is built upon his food and drink. إن دخل الحرام خرج الحرام. If haram is going in, haram is going to be coming out. وإن دخل الفضول خرج الفضول. If not haram but excessiveness is going in, then excessiveness will be coming out. فكأن الطعام بذر الأفعال. It's as if our food and drink is the seed for our actions. So it's very important to watch what is going into our bodies. والأفعال نبت تبدو منه. The actions are like plants which grow from our food and drink. One of the things I've mentioned a few times in a few talks, which are very important for us, especially those of us who have children, is to watch very carefully what goes into the children, the food and drink. As a general rule, to cut all the other stuff, I just make it into one principle. Anything that is natural is good. And anything that is unnatural, be wary of it. I'm not saying definitely it's something harmful, but I would say it will be 99% of the time harmful if it's an unnatural substance that is being taken in. Why? Because natural means created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created that food and drink, that natural substance. That's what it means by natural. And we know that the Quran says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated everything in the heavens and the earth for the human being. وَخَلَقَ لَكُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. In another place it says that everything in the earth is created for you, O human beings. Everything in the earth is created for you. This is very clear in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this isn't like, we don't have a Darwinian view of human existence, that the human being is like in a struggle against his environment. This is a very deep rooted in the philosophy of the West. We often don't realize how much we're influenced by these ideas as well. this idea that there's always a struggle, even in economics it comes in. The idea that there's limited resources, there's limited things, everyone's in a struggle, everyone has to get what they can. The weak and the mutated and the weak and those genes will die out. They're expendable people. This was a whole Nazi experiment, was based on these type of ideas, but they're also widely within Western thought. Evolution theory is part of it. That justifies the sort of ideological foundation of this. That there's always but no, we don't believe that. The Quran says the human being was made as the Khalifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and everything in the universe is actually created and subjugated for him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us abundance of rizq. There's no scarcity in resources on this earth for human beings. It's a lie that is told. The only reason why some people don't have food is because other people are hoarding it or not making it available because of greed. People who want their wealth to keep growing and growing into huge amounts, but they don't want to share with the poorer people in the world. So, the point there was, what's natural Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for us the food. Once I was at a talk actually by a homeopath, and they were saying actually the best food to eat is the food that is from your local area as well. So why? Because that's the natural environment that Allah has created for us in the area that we live. I think there's some limitations to that argument, because obviously even in the past people used to trade. But generally speaking, your local produce, the type of food. So if you live in England, now whatever the locals, I don't know what it is, wheat or potatoes, but even potatoes were brought here from somewhere else, weren't they? So I don't know what it is. Stuff that naturally grows in your own, that's what Allah has made the perfect nutrients for us. So whenever people try to bring artificial food, artificial additives, artificial flavorings, all of these things, these are then human beings, scientists trying to engineer them and to imitate the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will inevitably find harmful effects of these things.
It'll probably be cabbage, Yorkshire pudding and sprouts.
Even Yorkshire pudding, I saw on TV Jamie Oliver, and he was saying it's come from apparently from the Jews that came over from Europe. Allah, or was it fish and chips? I can't remember now. But yeah, you get the idea. So be careful with our children, what we're giving them, because these artificial foodstuffs, it's all driven by commercial interests. So we don't really see the true facts about the harmful effects, because those companies are very powerful, that are getting a lot of money from these products. So they're able to manipulate the situation. So that's about just being careful about the food and drink and everything we're taking. وَالثَّالِث أَنَّ فِي كَثْرِ الْأَخْلِ قِلَّةُ الْفَهَمِ وَالْعِلْمِ. He said the third thing, eating a lot will lead to less astuteness in our knowledge and our understanding. In other words, it sort of blunts the intellect. Eating too much all the time can blunt the intellect. Having less food makes you sharper. فَإِنَّ الْبَطِنَ تُذْهِبُ الْفَطِنَ. So it's like a sort of saying, excessively eating will get rid of our sharpness. وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَ الدَّارَانِ رحمه الله تعالى حيث قال إذا أردت حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة فلا تأكل حتى تقضيها فإن الأكل يغير العقل وهذا أمر ظاهر علمه ظاهر علمه لمن اختبره. So he mentions a saying by Ad-Darani who said, if you wish to do something or get something done in the dunya or the akhirah, don't eat until you've got the thing done. Yeah. So in other words, the idea of eating a lot, then preventing us from getting on with things that we need to do as well. You know? And it's also the time that people spend eating as well. You know? The actual amount of time in this culture can be quite excessive, you know. So Imam al-Ghazali finishes that section by saying that this thing about, you know, the eating a lot, blunting the intellect, is something that is known by people who have a sort of experience in these matters. وَالرَّابِعَ أَنَّ فِي كَثْرَةِ الْأَقْلِ قِلَّةُ الْعِبَادَةِ. And then the fourth thing is that eating and drinking excessively leads to less ibadah, as already mentioned. فَإِنْ أَكْثَرَ الْإِنسَانُ الْأَكْلَ ثقل بدنه وغلبته عيناه وفترت أعضاؤه فلا يجيء منه شيء. So once again, eating leading to someone becoming lazy and unable to fulfill ibadat. وإن اجتهد إلا النوم كالجيفة الملقاة. It becomes like the dead body, can't move around, lying down. وَلَقَدْ قِيلَ إِذْ كُنْتَ بَاطِنًا فَعُودْ نَفْسَكَ زَمِنًا. And someone has said, if you are excessively obese, then count yourself amongst those who are sort of infirm or infirm, you know, unable to do anything. وَلَقَدْ ذُكِرَ أَنْ يَحْيَى عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامَ أن إبليس بدا له وعليه معاليق فقال له يحيى. Nice story here, just mentioned. Don't know if the authenticity of it, but nice story that Iblis once came to Yahya alayhi salam, the prophet, with some spoons in his hand. فقال له يحيى ما هذه. Yahya said to him, what is this? What are these? فقال الشهوات التي أصيد بها بني آدم. He said, these are the desires by which I capture the human beings. The desires, in other words, you know, the food.
Oh, you said spoons. In here it says nets.
Nets?
Yeah.
Here it says meat hooks.
Meat hooks?
Yes, you know that you get probably in the butcher's. Yeah.
Forks or something. What do you have?
Yeah, ma'aliq. This is,
okay.
yeah, I think the closest to some.
Like forks or something. Yeah.
Because it gives between أعلق الصائد وقع الصيد في حبالته, which is more closer to net, not the
Okay, maybe, Allah alim. قال هل تجد لي فيها شيئا. Yahya alayhi salam said to him, do you find anything for me? Or Yahya said, were you able to use this against me in any way? قال لا. Iblis said to him, no, you know, I've never been able to catch you in this way. إلا أنك شبعت ذات ليلة فثقلناك عن الصلاة. He said, except for one time when you had filled yourself up. You filled up your stomach one night and then I made you delay or miss your prayer that night because you've been eaten, filled your stomach. فقال يحيى عليه السلام لا جرم أني لا أشبع بعدها أبدا. So Yahya عليه السلام said, definitely I will never fill my stomach again after today. فقال إبليس لا جرم أني لا أنصح بعدها أحدا أبدا. And Iblis said, I will definitely not give this advice to anyone again after you.
This story is also attributed to Musa alayhi salam as well. So
in a different place you've read it or something.
yeah, because he said he came to him and he said, "How can I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness?" One day Shaitan has this conversation with Musa alayhi salam, so he says, "I'll ask." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Musa alayhi salam, "Tell him to go and prostrate to the grave of Adam alayhi salam,"
Oh, yeah.
and he refused. So he says, "In return, I'll tell you my two biggest weapons. One is food and one is women."
So, فهذه في من لم يشبع في عمره إلا ليلة واحدة. So look at this as a person who only once in his life he had filled himself up. فكيف بمن لا يجوع في عمره ليلة واحدة? How about someone who's never been hungry even once in their life? ثم يجمع في العبادة, and then he wants to become someone who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وقال سفيان العبادة حرفة وحانوتها الخلوة وآلتها المجاعة. So this is just basically the importance of lessening one's intake of food and drink, you know, not to fill ourselves up, especially if we want to establish ourselves on worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Ghazali in his book Ihya, he gives more details about how to go about this, which he doesn't in this book because of probably, actually I don't know if he does later on, but you know, it says in practical terms, there's two ways you may go about this. One is, you know, so if you find that you eat too much and you feel that you're neglecting your ibadat through that eating and drinking excessively, now this is very difficult to combat this, you know, and he mentions that before. This is one of the real difficult things. Even those on the spiritual path, further along the spiritual path, one of the things they struggle with a lot, because this is something that's always with us, this shakwa, the stomach. There's two ways really. One is one that you can't, it will happen. If it happens, it will happen to you. This is when you'll suddenly, either by reading something, or, you know, often when people first start practicing or first taking the spiritual path, they're full with an excessive amount of energy to try to do a lot in the spiritual path or the path of purifying themselves. They may read some of these hadiths about not eating much, and they may immediately go from eating a lot to eating very little. Yeah? Because it's just like a flash of, there's something that's just really sort of overtaken them, and they feel a lot of like energy to do the thing. So they can do that, you know. And this often happens to people when they first either start practicing or become Muslim, or when they first start going on the path of purifying themselves. They get, you know, they start fasting a lot and eating very little, doing a lot of dhikr and so on. So that's good, and that's tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know. The other way for those who don't, because that's something you can't control. That will either it just happen or it won't happen. The other normal way, normative way, is Imam al-Ghazali describes in the Ihya al-Ulumuddin, is just a very practical way, just to monitor how much you're eating. You know, so, and he says, for example, if you eat for your main meal 2 loaves of bread, in those days, you know, people now you might say 2 rotis, let's say, for example. Yeah? The next day, eat like 1 3/4. Yeah? Just reduce it by a small amount. Don't try to go excessively. Reduce it straight away, because your stomach won't be able to handle that change. So just reduce it by just 1/4 of a bread. You know, then maybe do that for a few days or a week until your stomach becomes used to that, and then reduce it to 1 1/2 until you get to what you feel is a good amount. Yeah? So those are the type of practical steps that you can take. قال سفيان العبادة حرفة وحانوتها الخلوة وآلتها المجاعة. Sufyan, possibly meaning Sufyan ibn Uyayna, said that ibadah, worshipping, is a profession. And the offices or the premises where you undertake this profession is the khalwa, is seclusion. And the tool that you use in this profession is maja'a, being hungry. So just highlighting the importance of hunger and seclusion if one is to establish himself in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. والخامسة أن في كثرة الأكل فقدوا حلاوة العبادة. The fifth is that in eating too much, you lose the sweetness of worship. The sweetness of worship. قال أبو بكر الصديق رضي الله عنه ما شبعت منذ أسلمت لأجد حلاوة عباد ربي. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq said, I did not fill myself up from the time ever since I became Muslim. I did not fill myself up so that I could feel the sweetness of the worship of my Lord. وما رويت منذ أسلمت اشتياقا إلى لقاء ربي. And I have not fully quenched my thirst or drunk to my full since I became Muslim out of a deep longing to meet my Lord. وهذه صفات المكاشفين. He said these are the attributes of those people of kashf, the people of kashf, spiritual insights and unveilings. وكان أبو بكر رضي الله عنه مكاشفا. Abu Bakr was one of these, without doubt, who was a person of kashf. وإليه أشار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقوله ما فضلكم أبو بكر بفضل صوم ولا صلاة وإنما هو بشيء وقر في صدره. And this is a strong hadith, very interesting hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ said Abu Bakr is not better than you because of his fasting or his prayer. Very, very important. Abu Bakr has not got better than all of you because of his fasting and prayer, because the Sahaba knew the rank of Abu Bakr was above all the rest of them. He said, no, it is only because of something that is in his heart. Because of something that is in his heart. وقال الدراني حينما تكون العباد إذا التصق بطني بظهري. Another one of them said, the most pleasure I get from my worship is when my stomach is stuck to my back. In other words, it's empty. So this is once again an important point. If someone really wants to feel the pleasure of ibadah, the pleasure of dhikr, and all of these things, it won't happen on full stomach. It will happen when the stomach is not full.
Well, what does he mean by the translation where Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that Abu Bakr Siddiq does not excel you in the merit of fasting or ritual prayer, but only in something established within himself?
Within his heart, it says. Within his heart. Within sadr.
Okay.
In other words, the outward acts, like worship and prayer and fasting, someone might be doing 100 nafal.
Yeah.
Abu Bakr might be doing 5 or 6 nafal, or 6 nafal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But his 6 are better than that 100 because of what? His sincerity. So it's to do with sincerity, that's why it's called Siddiq. It's sincere. Okay? And the word Siddiq or Siddiq is from the Quran. مع الذين أنعم الله عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. And the Quran mentions these 4 ranks. النبيين, the prophets which no one can get to after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. So the Siddiq is after the prophets, above the shuhada. The Siddiq is above the shaheed. And this is the one who is from Sidq, the one who is completely sincere. Then the Shuhada, and then the Salihin, the righteous believers. والثالث أن فيه خطر الوقوع في الشبهة والحرام لأن الحلال لا يأتيك إلا قوتا ولقد روينا عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الحلال لا يأتيك إلا قوتا والحرام يأتيك جزفا جزفا. He's saying also, with excessively filling ourselves with the halal, it then becomes a danger of falling into eating what is either doubtful or haram. Why? Because he then mentions an interesting quote from attribute to the Prophet ﷺ as well, that the halal only comes to you. Qutan here means in sort of sufficient amounts. In other words, if you're going to eat only halal, you won't really get the excessive amounts. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you what you need for nourishment for your body. Well, haram, but the haram comes to you like comes in overwhelming quantities. So if someone really wants to keep filling more and more, they will then start possibly going into things which are haram as well.
Would that apply to money as well?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. That would apply to money as well. If people start becoming very excessive in their spending and their luxuries, the halal rizq they have may not be sufficient for them. Then they start getting the danger of doing things which are either then become borderline, the shubuhat, and then worse, even falling into haram to maintain that luxuries and that lifestyle. والسابع أن فيه شغل والقلب والبدن بتحصيله أولا. The seventh, remember he said there was 10 factors. With excessive eating or drinking, it will then preoccupy the heart and the body. This was mentioned, even physiologically we know when the stomach becomes full, the energy of the body, the blood supply, everything is diverted more towards the digestion process, because the digestion process is actually a very active process. So first of all, even getting the food and drink that you want, that's going to be, occupying your time, your mind, What should I eat this evening, Oh, I think I feel like having a real nice biryani this evening, of the Hyderabadi style, or, Then you're going to occupy yourself in trying to get those ingredients, or trying to, do all these type of things, activities. This is what, Shaykh Akram Nadwi says, one of our teachers, that we shouldn't be like, so obsessed about having these meals and everything, If you come home, your wife hasn't cooked anything, just eat some bread and make a sandwich, or eat some bread and cheese or something like that, Shouldn't be, sometimes become accustomed to these luxuries, we have to have a proper meal, like, a dish, and then some people, even, they have to have a sweet dish as well, after the meal. I think I was just laughing because I think I don't know if there's some type of belief culturally that you have to have a sweet. Actually, someone said it recently. Was it YouTube?
Yeah,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's fine.
About being sunnah to have sweet. Not that, it was just, I don't know, generally I've heard a lot from people that I know, after you eat, they say you have to have something sweet. I remember when I was in college, one of my Muslim flatmates, always after we eat, he said we have to have something sweet, go buy a Mars bar or something.
Is that a Daif hadith?
I don't know, is it a hadith?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
I don't want to say anything because it could, Allah Alim, but So you see the point. It becomes like a thing that we then become sort of too fixated on what we're going to eat, and what our meals are going to be, what the sweet is going to be, and all these things. So it can occupy a lot of time. A lot of people's time can go around just what they're going to put into their stomachs. Okay, بتحليله وبتهيئته ثانيا, and then preparing the food can take time as well. If one wants to have these exotic dishes, can take excessive amounts of time to prepare them sometimes. ثم بأكله ثالثا, and then even eating, the actual time spent eating. In the past there were stories of some of the ulama. They didn't waste time with these type of things. They should just be trying to eat very quickly. ثم بإفراغه والتخلص منه رابعا. And then after eating, if someone's eaten quite a lot, then you waste a lot of time trying to then get over that food that's been intaken. ثم بالسلامة منه خامسا, and then the diseases and things that can come through the food as well, the overeating of food. It's one of the things that Shaykh Ridhwan said as well. We spend excessive amounts of money filling ourselves up, and then we spend excessive amounts of money like dieting, purchasing diets or things like that. Similarly, all these illnesses that we can get from overeating as well. Different types of illnesses. This is what they're going to mention. This was the hadith that I was going to mention earlier. وَلَقَدْ قَالَ صلى الله عليه وسلم أصل كل داء البردة, يعني التخمة, وأصل كل دواء الأزمة, يعني الحمية. So this is something I wasn't aware of in this hadith. The Prophet said that the root of all illness is sort of the stomach, or the indigestion, or putting in the wrong things into the stomach. How do they translate this hadith? Anyone know the translation of this particular?
It says the root cause of every disease is indigestion, and the cure of every disease lies in eating less and remaining hungry.
Yeah, so quite amazing actually that now we know, even in the medical profession, that's what they say, that 80% of all sickness comes through the food. But also because it makes sense, because like we said earlier, the human being is created in a natural balance with his environment. As I mentioned earlier, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has subjugated everything for the human being. So the human being is made in a perfect form. The only way we disrupt ourselves is by what we take in to the body. So the main root of that is the food or drink. Now, obviously there's also now a problem of the inhalation. If you live in a place like we do in London, where there's so much pollution, we're taking into our body through our inhalation as well. That's going to harm us. Can't really, you can do something by leaving London, but the main avenue of things going into our body is from the food and drink. وعن مالك بن دينار أنه كان يقول يا هؤلاء لقد اختلفت إلى الخلاء حتى استحييت من ربي بسبب كثر العقل فيا ليت أن الله جعل رزقي في حصاة أمصها حتى أموت. Malik ibn Dinar, rahimahullah, he said to his people, his companions at that time, he said, I went so much to answer the call of nature that I felt shy in front of my Lord of eating too much. Yeah, but obviously eating and drinking more is going to lead us to more go to relieve ourselves. So he says, if only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could make my rizq in just chewing some stones, I would prefer that, you know. I would prefer that my rizq could be just from, if I could just have some stones that I could chew until I die. ثم لا بد في هذه الجملة من طلب الدنيا والطمع في الناس وتضييع الوقت بسبب كثرة العقل ما لم يخفى. So he says, Imam al-Ghazali says also, don't forget, related to this particular point is the excessive eating and drinking leading to excessively going after the worldly gains, to actually be able to get that, nice food and drink and, I don't know, eat at the top restaurants or things like that, You need to have money to do that as well. So you're going to then start preoccupying yourself in trying to earn money, gain more money to do that. Wasting time once again. والثامنة ما يناله من أمور الآخرة وشدة سكرات الموت. روي في الأخبار إن شدة سكرات الموت على قدر لذات الحياة. The 8th point, he says, is linked to, if we indulge ourselves in excessive pleasures in this world, how that will lead to more difficulties for us in the next world. And in the sakarat al-maut is the agonies of death, agonies of the dying moments. Yeah, he mentions one saying that the severity of the agonies of dying is linked to the amount of pleasures we had in this world. So people who indulge in more pleasures in this world will have more difficult agonies at the point of death. فَمَنْ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ هَذِهِ أَكْثَرَ لَهُ مِنْ ذَلِكَ تِلْكَ وَتَاسِعَ نُقْصَانُ الثَّوَابِ فِي الْعُقْبَى. The 9th consequence of eating and drinking too much is to reduce our reward in the next world. To reduce the amount of reward we could have had, because if we had been eating and drinking less, we would have been doing more ibadah and more of these type of things, so we would have got more higher ranks and more higher reward in the next world. قال الله تعالى أذهبتم طيباتكم في حياتكم الدنيا واستمتعتم بها فاليوم تجزون عذاب الهون بما كنتم تستكبرون في الأرض بغير الحق وبما كنتم تفسقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Ahqaf, verse number 20. Anyone have a translation? Or do you prefer it? Yes?
You squandered your good things in the life of this world and sought comfort therein. Now this day you are rewarded with the doom of ignominy, because you were disdainful in the land without a right, and because you used to transgress.
Okay, so here the point that he's trying to focus on is the first section where it says أَذْهَبْتُمْ طَيِّبَاتِكُمْ فِي حَيَاتِكُمُ الدُّنْيَا وَاسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهَا. وَاسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهَا. You took the pleasures of the world. You took the pleasures of this world, and that led you to lose out in the next world. Now this is very much from the prophetic sunnah. Yeah, very much rooted in the prophetic sunnah. Because people will say to you, but it's halal, brother, why are you saying we shouldn't indulge in these things which Allah has made permissible for us? Huh? So this is not for all Muslims. This is for those people who really want to establish themselves in sincerity and worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is for those people who want to go the extra way, and this is firmly rooted from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because we know, for example, in the Sahih, that when Sayyidina Umar came to him and he saw that he had marks on the side of his body from sleeping rough on the floor, on a mat, made of palm leaves and leather, covered with leather. And Sayyidina Umar said to him, just please give us the word and we will get you a proper bed. As we've seen the kings of Rome and Persia sleeping on these luxury beds. And you're the messenger of Allah, why should you have to be sort of torturing yourself? Not torturing, but living in such a, so that you have these marks on your side of your body. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Oh Umar, are you not pleased that for them are the luxuries of this world and for us are the luxuries of the next?" So clearly from the Sunnah we see this is not due to poverty or not having the means. The Prophet ﷺ, they would have given him anything, in Medina. And don't forget, towards the end of the time in Medina, they had quite a lot of wealth came in, especially when the Muslims took Khaybar, the Jewish stronghold of Khaybar. Massive amounts of booty came into Medina. They were not poor throughout their whole life. They had time when they had very hardships in poverty, the Sahaba, especially in the Meccan period. But in Medina, when a lot of victories start coming to Muslims, they had plenty as well. But the Prophet ﷺ continued upon that sunnah. That's the key thing. And when we study the life of Sayyidina Umar after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, it becomes even more apparent, this aspect, that even despite having those access to all of those luxuries and wealth, he continued upon the same minhaj. And he actually said that, my two companions were on a certain road. And I fear if I don't take that same road, I won't end up where they ended up. So that's how the Prophet ﷺ lived. So this is the idea of what we call zuhud. Not to indulge in excessively in the luxuries of the world, even if they're made available and even if they're halal. But like I said, it's not for every Muslim. This is something for those who really want to make it that extra, come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those people who want to strive for the higher ranks of the next world. ولهذا المعنى روي أن الله تعالى لما عرض الدنيا على نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم قال له ولا أنقص من آخرتك شيئا خصه بذلك ودل على أن لغيره النقصان إلا أن يتفضل الله عليه بذلك. And also he said this meaning is narrated that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he made the whole of the treasures of this world available to the Prophet ﷺ. But the Prophet ﷺ was told, even if you take all this, it will not reduce from your akhirah in any way. In other words, indicating here that this was special for him. But for others, like Sayyidina Umar, the famous story when the booty was brought from Persia, when the Muslims had destroyed the Persians and brought the huge amounts of wealth into Medina. Sayyidina Umar was weeping. They found him to be weeping when he was Khalifa. And they said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is a day of happiness. Everyone was so happy with, the Muslims have been victorious over the Persians and all that. And he says, I feared that we've been given our reward in this world. And we won't get our reward in the next world. So that's what I mean when I said this is something that is deeply rooted in the Sunnah. This isn't some funny stuff that's come from here or there. This is deeply rooted in the teaching of Islam. This idea of the more pleasures we indulge in here, the less that we may get in the next world. they would drink that, and it was very strengthening as well. It was a strengthening drink, very nourishing drink. So he bought him that to obviously as a sweet drink, being nice for the leader of the Muslims. فَلَمَّا قَرَبَهَا عُمَرَ مِنْ فِيهِ وَجَدَ الْمَاءَ بَارِدًا حَلْوًا. When Sayyidina Umar brought it close to his mouth, and he found that the water was actually sweet and cold, فَأَمْسَكَ, he stopped. وَقَالَ أَوَّهِ, he said أَوَّهِ, meaning like oh. فَقَالَ رَجُلٌ وَاللَّهِ مَا أَلَوْتُ هَلَاوَةً أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. The man or the boy, he was thinking maybe Sayyidina Umar is not happy with the drink, Why is he not drinking? He said, look, he said to him, oh, by Allah, I did sweeten it for you. فقال عمر ذلك الذي منعني منه. Umar said, that's why I'm not drinking it. The boy thought maybe because it's not sweet enough or cold enough.
Not enough salt. There's not enough salt in the food.
ويحك لولا الآخرة لشاركناكم في عيشكم. So Umar said to him, if it was not for the Akhirah, I would have joined you in these type of pleasures of the world. والعاشرة الحبس والحساب واللوم والتعيير في ترك الأدب في أخذ الفضول وطلب الشهوات. The 10th point, following all of our desires and excessively indulging in all of these luxuries and foods and drinks, etc., will lead to all of these things: habas, hisab, lawm, ta'yir. We always then blaming ourselves afterwards. It will lead to us being taken to account for these things in the Akhirah, in the Akhirah we'll be asked about pleasures,
What's habas? Habas?
Al-habas meaning habas literally means imprisonment. So just the idea here that al-habas wal-hisab,
Restraint.
it's going to lead to restraint. I think he means here like this is something you'll be taken to account for. I hope they translate it in your English. The first one, it says number 10.
So taking food more than necessary will entail a very severe reckoning hereafter.
This is number 10. Point number 10.
Number 10, yeah.
Is that what he says straight away?
Yeah. It says right.
What is your other translation?
Results in confinement.
Confinement, yeah.
Punitive
Like prison,
reckoning.
confinement. فإن الدنيا حلالها حساب وحرامها عقاب. Because the dunya, the halal of it will be taken into account. Will be taken into account for any pleasures that we indulged in. What's the last ayah of Al-Hakum al-Takathur? عن النعيم
ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم.
ثم تسألون يومئذ عن النعيم. On that day you will be asked about pleasures and the na'im. Pleasures there, any pleasures that we had, if they were halal, we will be asked about them. وزينتها إلى تباب. So the haram of the dunya will lead to punishment, and the zina, the extra ornamentation, the luxuries of the dunya will lead to destruction. فهذه جملة عشرة وفي أحدها كفاية لمن نظر لنفسه. So he said these are the 10 things that we have mentioned in the aspect of eating too much or drinking too much of the halal. And even in one of these is enough for someone who reflects upon it to cause him to moderate his intake. فعليك أيها المجتهد بالاحتياط البالغ في القوت كي لا تقع في حرام أو شبهة فيلزمك العذاب. So he says, then Imam al-Ghazali says, beware, O you mujtahid, O you who is struggling and striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be very precautious, to take extreme precaution in what you are taking into your body, so that it will not lead you to fall into what is haram or doubtful, and thus lead you into punishment. ثم بالاقتصار من الحلال على ما يكون عدة على عبادة الله تعالى. عدة. So it says, then following this, then be careful to reduce your intake of the halal, so that you can prepare yourself for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فلا تقع في الشر فتبقى في الحبس والحساب, so that you do not fall into shar, evil ways or wrong ways, and then end up within the confines, imprisoning yourself and leading to your own reckoning. Wallahu ta'ala waliyu tawfiqi subhanahu, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives tawfiq. فإن قلت, any questions or comments about that? فإن قلت فبين لنا أولا حكم الحرام والشبهة وحدهما وحدهما. So he says, if you were to ask me what is the hukm, what is the legal ruling on haram and shubha, what's the difference between haram and doubtful, and what are their definitions, فأقول لعمر الله لقد اشبعنا فيه في أسرار معاملات الدين. He said, I would say to you, look, I've explained this very fully in my other book, أسرار معاملات الدين. وذكرنا له كتابا مفردا في كتب الأحياء. And I've devoted a whole chapter to this in the book إحياء علوم الدين. لكننا نشير إلى كلمات مفردة بحيث تصل إلى فهم الضعيف المبتدئ، إذ مقصود هذا الكتاب أن ينتفع به المبتدئ في العبادة ويعين الطالب. So it says, however, we will mention a few points in this regard that will be easy for the beginner to understand, because the objective of this book is that the beginner in the path of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can benefit from it, and also it can be of some help to the one who is more advanced. Yeah? قال بعض العلماء ما تيقنت كونه ملكا للغير منهيا عنه في الشرع وهو حرام محض، وما إذا لم يكن لك يقين بذلك ولكن يغلب على ظنك أنه كذلك فهو شبهة. So what's the difference between haram and shubha? Something which is forbidden and something which is doubtful. Some of the ulama, they said, if you know something is definitely the property of someone else, or something that is definitely forbidden in the Sharia, then that is haram. But if it's something that you don't have certainty about, but you're fairly sure, that it is either the property of someone else or something that is forbidden in the Sharia, you're fairly sure, but not 100% sure, then it is shubha, something doubtful. وقال آخرون بل الحرام المحض ما يكون به علم أو غالب ظن. Other ulama said no, the haram is anything that you're sure is haram, or even if you're fairly certain, not 100%, that's also haram. لأن غلبة الظن مننا تجري مجرى العلم في كثير من الأحكام. Because why? غلبة الظن, preponderance of opinion, or being fairly sure about something, is the same thing as being sure about it in many of the ahkam of Sharia. It's considered to be the same.
So what point, because here this translation breaks off into subsection, so I haven't got, what you started reading now, I haven't got the English for it. So.
Why is it?
I don't know.
What does it say?
So here it just finishes on, nevertheless we shall now provide some abbreviated quotations so that you may achieve the understanding for the feeble novice, and then it goes on to subsection concerning the remedial treatment of this world, your fellow creatures, the devil and the lower self.
Oh. Seems to have skipped this whole part of it.
Yeah. Is it the same with you guys?
No,
You guys got it, okay.
It is sort of a bit of a detour that Imam al-Ghazali is taking, really. It's not so directly relevant to the purification aspect. It's more of a scholarly discussion, technical discussion about the terms. So that might be why he's just skipped it, or it's just about defining the term, what it means by haram, shubha. It's not so much of vital importance to the actual subject itself. But obviously Imam al-Ghazali, being a faqih, logician, philosopher, etc., he tends to sometimes get into these detours. وما إذا تساوت العبارتان حتى تبقى شاكا لا يكون لأحدهما ترجيح عندك فذلك شبهة. However, if the thing was totally doubtful, so it's shak, like 50-50, then that would be something which is shubha, doubtful. يشبه أنه halal ويشبه أنه الحرام. It could be halal, it could be haram, we don't know. فاشتبه أمره عليك والتبس حاله. That was the second opinion. ثم الامتناع عن الذي هو حرام محض حتم واجب. Following on from there, the thing which is definitely haram, there's no doubt, it is obligatory to avoid that thing. وعن الذي هو شبهة تقوى وورع. To avoid the thing which is shubha is not obligatory in that same sense, but it's from taqwa and wara. For those people who want to take the position of taqwa. وهذا أولى القولين عندنا. Imam al-Ghazali said this is the more correct of opinion according to me. فإن قيل فما تقول في قبول جوائز الصلاتين في هذا الزمان. Then he goes into a different question related to that, which is a good, interesting. It's not tasawwuf. It's linked to tasawwuf. What do you say about accepting gifts or payments from the rulers in our time? Yeah? What do you say about accepting gifts from the rulers, Salatin, from the rulers in our time, meaning in the time of Imam al-Ghazali? So this was a burning question, Some said you can't take anything from the rulers, because their wealth is full of either haram or at best shubuhat. Where they're getting the wealth from unlawful taxes or usurping people's properties, etc., etc. So Imam al-Ghazali discusses this point in some depth. He says, فَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْعُلَمَاءِ اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ. Says, know that the scholars have differed on this point. Is it permissible to take gifts or payments from the rulers? فقال قوم كل ما لا يتيقن أنه حرام فله أخذه. Some of the scholars said, look, as long as you're not certain that what is being given to you is haram, you can take it. You know, as if the ruler, the sultan or the governor or whoever, the prince, he gives you a sum of money because let's say you're a scholar or something. As long as you're not 100% sure that this particular thing he's giving you is haram, you can take it. If he's giving you, say, I don't know, say some gold coins, and you know with 100% certainty that they are haram, he's just seized them unlawfully from some other people, and it's that same money he's giving to you, then you can't take it. If not, then you can take it. وقال آخرون لا يحل أن يأخذ ما لا يتحقق أنه حلال. Another group of ulama, they said no, sort of the opposite. They said you can only take that gift from the sultan if you are 100% sure that it is halal. So the first opinion was you can take it as long as you're not 100% sure it's haram.
On those grounds, should you question the person that gave it to you in the first place, or should you leave it?
If it's a sultan, better not to. It's politely different. Yeah, no, he'll mention that later as well. In some cases where it's not the sultan but other people that are giving you gift and you're not sure, he'll come to that later. But basically you shouldn't really question a Muslim if they're basically a righteous person. Then it's about husn al-dhan, you should just have a good opinion and take it. لأن الأغلب في هذا العصر على أموال السلاطين الحرام. So these ulama, they said you cannot take it unless you're 100% sure it's halal. They said because the majority in our time is that the wealth that is in the hand of the rulers is haram. وَالْحَلَالُ فِي أَيْدِيهِمْ مَعْدُومٌ عَزِيزٌ. And very little of their wealth is actually halal. So based on that, they said you shouldn't take it unless you're 100% sure that the thing he's giving you is from halal income.
This was 900 years ago, was it?
Yeah.
What do you mean by unlawful taxes, you say?
Any taxes that are not based on Sharia, that are unlawful.
Okay.
They might take excessive amounts of, instead of taking a normal tax, they might take excessive. I can't give any concrete examples, but they used to have taxed all sorts of things. وقال قوم إن صلاة الساطين بسلاطين تحل للغني وسلاطين تحل للغني والفقير إذا لم يتحقق أنها حرام وإنما تبع على المعطي. So other scholars said, no, look, if the rulers give gift or payments, even if you're rich or poor, you can accept it. And once again, as long as you're not 100% sure this is totally haram, from a haram source. And whoever, the person giving, that's their business, whether it's halal or haram, it's not your business. قالوا لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل هدية المقوقس ملك الإسكندرية. And they said the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم accepted gift from different rulers. And they mentioned Maqawqas, the king of one of the North African areas, Iskandaria, Alexandria. He sent gift and the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم accepted and didn't think, oh, what if his wealth is haram or halal, etc. واستقرض من اليهود مع قول سبحانه وتعالى وأكالون للصحت. Also we know the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم took loans from Jewish person, even though the Quran mentions that concerning the Jews that they are people who eat haram. الأكالون بالسحت. There are people who excessively indulge in those things which are haram in their wealth. But the Prophet did take loan. قالوا وقد أدرك جماعة من الصحابة أيام الظلم وأخذوا منهم فمنهم أبو هريرة وابن عباس وابن عمر وغيرهم. They also use the proof that many or some of the Sahaba that lived on after the Khulafa Rashidun period, they were in the period of the what they call the Zalama, the unrighteous rulers of the Umayyads, but they were receiving payments and salaries or payments, because from the Bayt al-Mal, the Sahaba were given from the time of Sayyidina Umar. He would give from the Bayt al-Mal a certain amount of money for the early Sahaba, for the wives of the Prophet ﷺ had a certain amount, the Muhajirin, the Ansar, and it was based on their ranks. People of Badr had more than the people who became Muslim afterwards, and so on. Yeah? And so he says these Sahaba, great Sahaba like Abu Hurairah, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, they were continuing to take from this money. They didn't see that now the rulers are unrighteous, we shouldn't take. وقال آخرون لا يحل من أموالهم شيء لا لغني ولا لفقير. Other scholars took a much more hardline stance and they said no one's allowed to take anything from the wealth of the rulers, whether the person is poor or rich. إذ هم موسومون بالظلم, because these are zalim, these are oppressors, these are tyrants. والغالب من حالهم السحت والحرام. Most of the wealth they have is haram. والحكم للغالب, and we take the ruling of whatever is the majority, and the majority of the wealth is haram, so we consider all of the wealth to be haram. فيلزم الاجتناب, so they said it's actually obligatory not to take anything from their wealth. وقال آخرون ما لا يتيقن أنه حرام فهو حلال للفقير دون الغني. Another position was that as long as you're not sure that the particular wealth being given to you is haram, the poor person may accept, but the rich person should not accept from the ruler. So that was like an in-between stance. They made it differentiated between a poor person and a rich, because the poor person is in need, he should take from the public money, which is the Sultan's money. But the rich person is not in that need, so he can take the more precautious stance. إلا أن يعلم الفقير أن ذلك عين الغصب. But even the poor person, if he knows the thing being given to him is the actual haram money that has been taken from usurping or somewhere, he should not take except to return it to its rightful owner. فليس له أن يأخذه إلا ليرده على مالكه ولا حرج على الفقير أن يأخذ من أموال السلاطين. So the faqir may take from the wealth of the salatin, the public treasury, etc. لأنها إن كانت ملك السلطان فأعطي الفقير فله أخذه بلا ريب. وإن كانت في فيء أو خراج أو عشر فللفقير فيه حق. Because the poor person has a right upon the public money as well. The taxes that come from the Sharia, the ushur, the kharaj, and so on, a portion of them are supposed to be for poor people anyway. Yeah? وكذلك لأهل العلم, and also for scholars, people of knowledge. Yeah? Why they mention them? It's not because they're having self-interest there. Yeah? Because often the ulama, they devote themselves to studying and then to teaching, but they don't have an income, so they can take from the public money as well. قال علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه من دخل الإسلام طائعا وقرأ القرآن ظاهرا فله في بيت مال المسلمين كل سنة 100 درهم ورمي 100 دينار. So he mentioned from Sayyidina Ali رضي الله عنه establishing this, giving of a certain amount of money for people who are studying the Quran or people of knowledge. إن لم يأخذها في الدنيا أخذها في الآخرة. And he went on to say, if he doesn't take his 200 dinar or dirham from this world, in this world, he would take it in the akhirah. وإن كان كذلك فالفقير والعالم يأخذان فيه من حقهما. So what they're trying to say is, the faqir or the alim, they actually have a right to a certain portion of the public treasury. So if the sultan is giving them a gift, or they can have the sort of intention that I'm just taking from what was rightfully due from the public money. So one of the illustration of this is in Sayyidina Abu Hanifa and his student Abu Yusuf. This type of tension between should you take or not take from the wealth of the rulers. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah refused to work for the sultan, even though he was offered the job of being the chief qadi of the Muslim state. He refused to work for the ruler. And a famous saying of Abu Hanifa, when you see a scholar at the gate of the ruler, then question him in his deen. But his leading student Abu Yusuf, he actually did take the post of Qadi al-Qudat, the chief Qadi of the Islamic State, and the Khalif Harun Rashid, the famous Abbasid Khalif. So that's the sort of differing opinions about this.
Was Abu Hanifa alive at the time?
No, I don't believe so. And he became the Qadi al-Qudat, the chief Qadi, and so he's responsible for appointing all the Qadis of the Islamic Empire. And he achieved so much great good through that position. And obviously that was one of probably the reasons for the spread of the Hanafi madhab as well throughout the Islamic lands. But he did not compromise in his deen in that position that he took. Okay, let's leave it there, inshallah. Any questions about that last point?
Yeah, the question is here that there are so many school of thoughts about accepting the gifts or from the rulers, these things. So which one we should adopt? That is the question, number one. Number two is whether a ruler, because anything which is coming to the ruler, as long as it is not his own business, belongs to the public. So apart from needy people, those who are poor or who are needy, it is fine if he is giving the gift. But what right he has got to give the gift to those people who are already well off? He doesn't have any right because the money doesn't belong to him. Yes, for the needy it should go according to our Islamic ways, so much for this, so much for them, for that. But why a ruler should have this right? So in that way we should accept it. There are so many school of thoughts, which one we are going to?
According to the first question, if there's so many different opinions or school of thought, sometimes some issues are like that,
And then at the same time, as you said, that Hudud did borrow the money from the Jews, and that money was not right. If we accept that, then it means if somebody has got haram money, and we want to borrow because we are in need, then we can take that money in spite of the fact that we are knowing that.
I mean, the thing is with the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't say that he borrowed the money which was haram. But they made the point because the Quran says about the Jews, أَكَّلُونَ لِلسُّحَتِ. These are people that eat a lot of haram. But the money that he borrowed, we don't know, obviously we would assume that it wasn't, from that particular instance. But the point that was made here was because the Quran describes them as people who take a lot of haram, but the Prophet ﷺ did still take loans from them. And perhaps, we don't know, did he question them, where's the money from?
Sure.
in certain, I mean, the thing with the deen, there are certain things which are clear-cut haram, and certain things that are clear-cut that we have to do, which are wajib. But there are many things that there's going to be difference of opinion, different opinions about it. You know, is it allowed? Is it not allowed? Should you do this? That's the nature of things. So the most important thing is those things which are clear-cut haram, we should avoid them completely. You know, those things which are clear-cut obligatory, we should do them. That's really probably the most important thing. And those things where there's different discussions about it, we shouldn't be don't need to get too obsessed. If we want to be more careful with our deen, we will take the more careful position. So we will try to avoid them. Yeah. But we don't always have to make that so difficult on the Muslims as well. And the other question was? I can't remember now.
Yeah, the other question was as a ruler.
Yeah, oh yeah, the money. Yeah, I mean, some of the money, the ruler will obviously have some of his personal wealth as well. And obviously in that he can do whatever he wants. But yeah, the other money, which is public money, obviously then, yeah, they shouldn't, he can't touch that, you know, really, strictly speaking.
And the other thing about taking a job, as you have mentioned one of these duties, even if the ruler is corrupt or not and he is offering a job, like justice or something, then why not to accept the job, but when you take the job, you act according to the religion. You know, don't act what they are telling you. So in that way, you can accept it, but start practicing the way we have been told. Maybe you will be fired next day, but unless you accept it, you don't know. Maybe he may realize by you as an honest person accepting it, and you start practicing or telling me this is right. So not to accept, is it right? Or to accept it and then, you know, even if you are fired next day, fine.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you can do the job without doing things which are clear-cut haram, then it could be okay. You know. But if it's a job you know that will involve you to do things which are clear-cut as haram, and you have to do that regularly, then don't do that job.
Say have a choice of eating less or eating more, but not trying to waste, for the reason of not wasting food. Is that any kind of general opinion? Somebody said, why it's going to get rotten anyway, so why let it rot in your belly?
Yeah.
You're trying not to waste it, just eat more so that you're not wasting it. But actually you're wasting, the food is still going to be, wasted, but it's going to be wasted in your belly. Someone said...
That's a difficult one, yeah. You do come across this a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
If there's some food left over, if you finish it, it will overfill you. But if you don't, then you might be wasted. So this happens quite often. What do people have any opinions with respect to
Don't do it next time. Next time don't eat, too much so you don't have to either waste it or you
It's good food, you could give it to someone.
But is there?
Sorry?
You could give it to like a neighbour or something. It's good food.
But if it's like left over on the plate,
Yeah.
I don't think they would probably accept
few
it.
bites.
Here, I think in two ways. As you said, don't prepare so much that you should waste. Fine. At home it is fine. You can manage it, you can arrange it, you can control it. But just think about, if you go in the aeroplane and they offer so much food,
That's true, yeah.
are you going to eat all of it? I will eat, I eat it, don't waste it. Because it is only one day or, 8 hours. Whether that is correct or not.
Even in restaurant it could happen, isn't it?
You can pack restaurant food.
Often you can ask them to pack it, but maybe sometimes you can't, I don't know.
I had a situation on the
You
plane.
can ask them to pack it.
What do you think of that?
On the plane I had this because they didn't have any children's meals. They gave us 2 adult meals for both daughters. So I ate probably just under 3 containers.
Well, you take that opinion.
I was asleep for a while.
But sometimes with the children, I want to teach them not to waste food. You actually
Yeah,
okay.
it's true.
So that in the future you don't.
In restaurant it is all right. If you are
Yeah.
serving and then you ask them to pack, don't eat too much, you know.
Yeah, restaurant is okay. It's a good question. I mean, I don't know the answer. I mean, I don't know if, I mean, we would want to do a survey about it, man.
Hold it.
Yeah.
Can't really follow that.
Because even here, so much food is wasted. In hospitals, you know. How much, my God.
Yeah, it's true, so true.
So it's
I mean, obviously, if some way you can save it, better to save it and eat it later or next day. But I don't know if there's any answer to that.
There's only one by food. It comes with the chips. Say I don't want chips. It comes with it.
Yeah,
It's
they
okay.
force you to sometimes.
Yeah,
It's true.
give
Yeah,
it to somebody else free of charge. I'm just going to waste it.
I've done that sometimes. I've said to them, give me like just a few chips or half a portion. They're like, you can't just take they give me the whole.
Yeah, well,
You
like
don't
you
know
go
what
to the
to do,
supermarket
isn't
and then have like buy one or free,
Yeah, yeah,
and then you'll have to buy both, otherwise
yeah.
you get to waste.
But that you can give it.
You can, I guess if you package, you can just give it out to someone else.
Yeah, that you can.
And then-
Yeah.
With what we like.
Something like chips is a good example because chips you can't really even save, can you? Because you can't eat them later; they're just gonna go cold. So you either eat them now or you're gonna throw them in the bin. I think I would probably throw them myself, but I don't feel too good about it.
You can reuse chips. There's a way.
Refry them or something.
No, very low heat with a bit of water goes back to normal again.
With water. Boil them in water.
In a frying pan,
Oh,
sprinkle water on it, very low heat. Just try it. Go back to normal again.
okay. That's good to solve that dilemma again. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Alhamdulillah.
Did you set up the charities thing? Did you email them?